Well, we're back again for the Epicenter podcast, episode 35. My God, it's slowly creeping up there. On this podcast, we feature industry influencers and business leaders who are actually helping shape today's digital economy. And well, I have a super interesting guest who I discovered during COVID when I was trying to learn. And Jeffrey Towson, welcome to Epicenter.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This is great.
Welcome. Super excited to have you here. I know we connected about, 3 years ago?
A couple years ago. COVID time.
Yeah. I discovered your content and I was like, let me get a hold of this guy. Let me see what he's up to. And the topic of today's podcast is moats and marathons, building and measuring a competitive advantages for digital businesses. Stolen right from Jeff's own book. I'm so unique. Jeff, tell us about yourself. Give us the background, where you come from, how you came to, becoming such a pensmith and a podcaster and everything in between.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of been a cool but strange trip, I suppose. These days, I live in Asia, although I'm spending a decent amount of time in Europe, and I basically do digital strategy, which is software, data technology. Increasingly, it's AI, which is fantastic. And that tends to be Asia-focused, but really it's global at this point. So you work with companies who often not totally sure what to do. You can write books, you can teach, professor, you can do podcasts. I mean, if you have your subject in life these days, and it's kind of a complicated, evolving subject, which I have, there's a lot of avenues now. You can invest, you can consult, you can do, so that's kind of what I do. I sit in my little spot. And it also helps that China is one of the epicenters.
Yes.
So my joke is I'm at the intersection of two really cool things. Like digital's super fun and it's cool. And the rise of China and Asia is super cool and it's super fun. And I kind of get, let's go talk to Alibaba. Let's go talk to Tencent. Oh, this is great. Let's go to Singapore and meet Lazada CEO. I'm like, oh, this is fucking awesome. Can I swear on your podcast?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm like, this is awesome. Let's do this again. It's kind of just a lot of fun stuff that sits in my wheelhouse these days. Having a lot of fun.
But you've been a university lecturer, professor. You've written a few books. Well, I mean, how did you get from there to, from where you were to where you are right now?
I'm just an analyst. That's all I do. Is I sit at a desk and I take things apart and I try and figure out the answer. What's next? Good advice. So came out of a consulting background, which is pretty much what you do, right? Advised a Saudi billionaire for a while on his businesses, worked out of Saudi for a while, came to Asia, but it's all kind of the same thing, right? So now you're looking at digital companies, or you're looking at companies going digital, which is kind of all of them.
Yes.
Not all of most of them. So it's just analytical work. But these days, in the past, if you were an analyst, let's say 15 years ago, what do you do with that? Well, you can invest, you can consult, you can be a professor, you can write books. That's kind of it. Yeah, but now there's ultimate channels. You can podcast, you can do videos, you can do blogging, now there's so many channels. And of those, books and being a professor are kind of the least interesting.
But they do have heavy clout, right?
I don't think they have clout.
Really?
It used to be being an author, professor had some clout, but there's a million professors in this world. Every town has a university with a professor teaching accounting. Nobody knows them, right?
In Asian culture, it gets a lot of respect.
Now, that's true. If you're a professor, I was a professor at Peking University in Beijing.
Wow.
That was a big deal.
Yes.
You would go to secondary cities at a restaurant and maybe the waiter asks you, what do you do? I say, I'm a Beida Jiaoshou. And they would stop. They'd be like, oh my, okay, that doesn't happen anywhere else. If you're, if you're a professor in New York City with your buddies, maybe trying to get a date, That's not the job title that gets hedge fund manager gets the date, right? Professor doesn't get you the date in Midtown Manhattan on a Friday night. So yeah, China's a little bit funny in that regard, but these days, no. There's reasons to do those things, and I do those things. I think writing books is one of the few ways to develop real depth of thinking. Mm-hmm. You can't get there with blogs. So I think there's value in that. But in terms of reach, no, Professor's very limited. Mm-hmm. Books are pretty limited. Podcasts are fairly powerful. Global reach, right? So there's still reasons to do all of these activities, but it's all a manifestation of the same thing, which is I sit at a desk and I take things apart and I try and sort of figure out what to do with this. Mm-hmm. What do you do as a supermarket in Brazil with generative AI?
What do you do?
The answer to that is don't worry about it, my friend. Now, what do you do with apps and mobile and delivery? Oh, yeah, you better get moving.
Yes.
Because there are a lot of really smart companies coming up on your 6, and they are very good at disrupting people who have these big legacy assets. Okay, generative AI, don't worry about it. On-demand delivery for, let's say, beverages and alcohol, yeah, you better move. So that's sort of, you build out these, you analyze it, and then you sort of, maybe you give advice on what to do. I actually did that with a supermarket in Brazil.
Can you unpack that a little bit more? Like, what's the process that, because we have a lot of listeners of this podcast who are actually in a tech company or in a company that is involved in digital transformation of some shape or form. How do you kick that off? Like, how do you rip it apart? How do you give actionable plan and then make sure that it gets implemented properly?
Yeah, I mean, I've written literally 7 books on this one question.
Okay.
Right?
Let's see if we can cover it in the next 40, 50 minutes.
8 years of research, 7 books on one question, which is how do you build and create and maintain competitive strength under digital change? Which is kind of what everyone's dealing with. Now, some businesses are not. If you're Starbucks, the digital tools don't make that much of a difference to you. If you're in retail, if you're in auto, if you're in media, yeah, it is just, you're getting hit. And you got to know what to do and what not to do. Because the truth is, most CEOs, you can't do 20 digital initiatives. Although the vendors will come to you every week and say, we've got a new tool, my friend, and you've got to buy this because if you don't, you're in trouble. Right? No. So that's where the strategy bit comes in. Look, and I will do this with companies in Asia, China, Germany, France, Brazil. Here's what winning looks like in 2 years. Let's describe it. Oh, and by the way, here's what losing looks like in 2 years. Based on that, you're going to do a lot of things, but there's 2 or 3 that matter. You can play with generative AI. You want to do some NFTs? Everyone was doing NFTs last year. Have some fun. But there's 2 or 3 activities you're going to have to invest serious mind, money, resources, because if you don't do these 2 or 3, world is either going to be a lot better or a lot worse for you in 2 years. That's the strategy judgment question. A lot of that is, you can read the books. We do consulting engagements. A lot of it's just talking on the phone. CEOs will call. Can we talk about it? I'm like, yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it. You're good. Really? Yeah, but you're pretty good. So a lot of it's kind of relationship. They often don't know who to call because there's nobody on their team that has real depth in this. And the stakes of winning versus losing are getting more extreme.
Yes.
If you win, you can win bigger and faster than ever. If you lose, it's pretty brutal and it happens. Like, the stakes are going up for getting it right and getting it wrong. So a lot of it is just sort of becoming a little bit of a quasi team member for them to call. Now, if you're GE or you're Anheuser-Busch or whatever, okay, you have a digital team and maybe you just want a second opinion. But if you're a medium-sized supermarket in Sao Paulo, you don't have a digital team. You have people who know how to stock the shelves and order and build stores. And even if you try and build a digital team, those people have all the options in the world these days, right? Mm-hmm. So it's usually somebody like me who's sort of a bit of an advisor, plus that's usually how you get there. Retailers in Sao Paulo, media companies, newspapers in Singapore. Depending what sector you're in, this is a minor problem or a major problem. The auto people are freaking out. Mm-hmm. CPG companies, e-commerce, retail, media, communications, they're all freaking out. And they should. Mm-hmm. You know, podcasters. If you're in the content creation business, I do content, you do content. Uh-oh. Dude, the world keeps getting turned upside down.
Yeah.
It's like, so other
pretty soon
sectors.
It won't be us sitting here, right? It'll just be.
Other sectors are getting hit, transformed, mm-hmm. but it's happening slower. Mm-hmm. Industrial. Healthcare is happening, but it's kind of slow. Financial services, banks, yes, but slow. Some people are on the frontier, and things are a little quicker. Mm-hmm. Other companies are like, we don't worry about this stuff.
So like a Starbucks basically coming with a ordering system via mobile app, that's not a digital strategy. That's just table stakes, right?
It's an upgrade.
It's an upgrade to your existing
Most
way
businesses have to upgrade with technology over time. It's very normal. That's very different than something that's transformative, that creates new business models we've never seen before, that changes the customer experience so much that you become obsolete if you can't match what they do.
So what are some examples of companies that have changed the customer experience so much from your perspective, or companies that you've worked with?
Yeah, I have a little cheat sheet I use. I mean, there's a bunch of books, but really, who's going to read 7 books? Certain people do. And then I have a couple little cheat sheets.
Let's see the cheat sheet.
One is, I just call it the digital superpowers, mm-hmm. and there's 7 of them. If you see this emerging in your industry, this is like you're fighting someone in your business year after year, and suddenly they get a superpower. Mm-hmm. If you see this emerge, you got to hit the panic button. Mm-hmm. And one of them is like, is there a 10x improvement in the user experience? Mm-hmm. If there is, that's a big, big deal. That is YouTube emerging, and suddenly the cable companies hit the panic button because it's like, wait, they offer millions of videos for free. That's a real problem if you're a cable channel, right? When WhatsApp emerged, mobile companies used to charge you for text messages.
Yep. Kids, pay attention to that.
And it's like, ooh, that's a big, when Steve Jobs came along and said, like, you don't have to buy CDs anymore with 10 songs, 9 of which you don't want. You can buy one track you want for 99 cents, and you can listen to it anywhere. That was a 10x improvement. And so we see that sort of 10x improvement. Supermarkets going digital, which is mostly a China story, but actually Brazil's pretty good at this, which is surprising. That's a game changer, 10x improvement. Beauty and fashion, which is merging with media. It used to be you would go down to Sephora. Sephora's a good... People are buying makeup and cosmetics on TikTok Shop, right? They're watching 90 minutes of videos every single day and then clicking over to buy lipstick.
Right.
If you're Sephora, how do you compete with that? Oh, and by the way, people love it because it turns out beauty products, okay, yeah, it's a lot about the retail experience. Walk into the store, have a good selection at a good price, but it's a lot about entertainment and psychology and media and staring at a screen for 90 minutes a day, watching your favorite influencer talk about the newest brands they found in Milan. Okay, there's a lot more to the user experience than just retail. It's emotional, it's entertainment, it's educational. So when the user experience has a lot of dimensions to it, there's more that you can do with digital tools. Now, this is why Starbucks doesn't have much of a problem, because there's not really much to the user experience of buying a cup of coffee. Not really. You can order it on your phone and you can have it delivered. Okay, that's fine. But people aren't watching 90 minutes of coffee videos, right?
Unless you want to become a barista, right?
Yeah, and maybe you go down and sit with your friends in the nice store, and that's part of the experience. But there aren't actually too many dimensions to the experience of buying a cup of coffee. And the dimensions you do have are mostly in person. Get the cup of coffee, sit with your friends.
Yeah.
So, what should I do with digital? You're pretty good. Have an app, offer delivery. You're probably going to have some automatic robot baristas at a certain point. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. I think you're in pretty good shape. Other businesses, it's like, no. You're a supermarket down the street from the new Alibaba Fresh Hippo. Yeah, hit the panic button, because they're changing the entire nature of this game. So that would be one, user experience, but then you can go through the others. Does it create network effects? Does it create a powerful competitive advantage? Does it create a platform business model? This is all digital strategy stuff. Is there a viral mechanism that gets you users? Then there's other, but that's kind of more in the strategy weeds. If you see one of those emerge, if you're a regular retailer and Amazon or Taobao, Alibaba show up with a marketplace platform business model, that's just a more powerful business model. And they pretty much rolled over everybody. Toys R Us in trouble. A lot of these retailers, big box retail, in trouble. And then others responded to that, like, let's say, Best Buy. Everyone thought Best Buy was in deep trouble. Turns out they came up with a pretty great business model by offering their Geek Squad and becoming a retail plus a service business. Where my mom, whenever she buys a TV, she brings the Best Buy people out to help her because it's too... So there's counter strategies too, right? So
the plus effect, right? So, I mean, it's like you can sell something, or you can sell something with service, or you can sell something with service and after service. And
if you're a content business, content is pretty brutal business. If you're a content plus service business, that's McKinsey. That's a nice model.
Yeah.
Consulting plus deep strategy content. That's a really good business model. So there's counter strategies to these things. So if you know what you're doing, usually things can usually work out.
Where does one find this framework?
You can go over to my webpage, jefftowson.com. There's a podcast, the Tech Strategy Podcast was my podcast. There's 7 books. I mean, I have content coming out of my ears, literally like 700 articles and 192 hours of podcasts. Like, it's crazy. Every now and then I meet some crazy dude. He's like, I listen to all your podcasts. I'm like, really? 192 of them? He's like, yeah. I'm like, dude, you're like me. Like, we should hang out. Like, we're both like so deep into, for most people, read one of the books is called the 1 Hour Moats and Marathons book. We distilled all of it down to a 1 hour book that you can read in an hour. That's co-published by me and McKinsey. That's for most people, right? Like, if you want to go down the rabbit hole, I got you covered. That's where I live. I live in the rabbit hole. Like, you come on down.
This framework that you talked about, is it similar to the Moats and Marathons, or is it a new concept?
It's all together. It's all digital strategy and digital transformation.
Okay.
That's the one question. And if there's a book, we literally just came out a couple weeks ago called 1 Hour Moats and Marathons.
Okay. Tell us a little bit more about.
And that's just a distillation of everything to look. You're a busy executive. You can read this one in an hour. That's it. And it pulls the key points, and it's very usable and sort of much more user-friendly than... Now, investors tend to go down the rabbit hole because they love frameworks. Most CEOs can't do that. They're executive, too busy, right? So that one is probably pretty helpful. And we did that on purpose.
Well, I definitely look forward to reading that, because I was trying to find it the other day.
It's up on Amazon now. 1 hour modes and marathons. There's a digital version and a paperback version.
So how like you talk about this book, Modes and Marathons, how to build and measure this competitive advantage.
Yeah, competitive strength versus.
So what are some of the, like, you recently talked about BYD in one of your recent podcasts.
Yeah,
I think it's really interesting because, you know, them as a company, they're basically looking at market share right now. Just how
growth and market share.
How many, like, profitability is not the top of their agenda. They're out to get as many cars as possible into the market. They've been in the car industry, like 20 years, something like that?
Yeah, batteries, 27 years. Cars, 20 years probably.
20 years.
But slow start. I mean, they've really only, Elon Musk used to make fun of their cars 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. Really only the last 7 years they've popped up, and now their cars are everywhere.
Well, doesn't Tesla use BYD battery now?
Yeah. They were a battery manufacturer.
Okay.
Like, this is, BYD, I've been writing about them forever. They used to be a battery manufacturer founded by a guy named, Wang Chuanfu, who is, Charlie Munger called him the Thomas Edison of China. Mm-hmm. He's, Elon Musk is a technologist, right?
Right.
Jeff Bezos isn't. That's why when they both make rockets, one guys can land and the others can't, because one of you is a physicist and one of you is not. Mm-hmm. Wang Chuanfu is the real deal. He's a seriously trained metallurgist and chemistry dude who has been in the business of making batteries since 1995. Mm-hmm. And he went from, hey, I've got a startup idea, to 50% of all the world's batteries in smartphones and laptops within 7 years. And he took out all the Japanese competitors, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, he was the real deal. And then he went into cars early on in a very bold move, very much like Elon. Like, he was way ahead of the curve. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to build cars. And everyone's like, you're crazy. And for 10 years, he was crazy. And then it worked. And now he's arguably the depends how you measure it. I'm not an auto guy at heart, but it's him or Tesla, mm-hmm. right? Like, these are the people that are out front. Now, Toyota's pretty good, Hyundai's pretty good. There's others, but he's number one in China, which is the world's largest EV market. And Tesla's everywhere in the US. So this is like the battle of the champions coming online. It's going to be great.
Well, you, like myself, spend a lot of time in China, and every time I go there, I see a new brand of EV on the road.
They're everywhere. BYD's everywhere, but there's all these brands like
NIO, and there's Xiaomi just launched a car, and aren't they all built off of the BYD battery technology?
Yeah, I mean, there's three businesses here. There's battery production, which is not just production, but it's innovation. Mm-hmm. You have to think up new ways to make batteries. So BYD is pushing the frontier of battery technology and manufacturing scale. Mm-hmm. So is CATL and a couple others. Mm-hmm. Then you get to, okay, let's talk car companies. Okay, everyone's making EVs, mm-hmm. and most of them are buying their batteries from someone at some scale or to some degree, mm-hmm. including Tesla.
Right.
And then you go further and you think, okay, that's car companies, EVs, there's a lot of those. But then there's really AI robotics companies. And that's what Tesla is now. It's mm-hmm. not a car company. It is an AI robotics company. And their first product was a car. Mm-hmm. But their second product was a robot that can twirl a pencil, mm-hmm. right? So what business are you really in? Mm-hmm. BYD's in we're a battery giant and an EV company. Mm-hmm. Tesla's going the other direction. We're a AI company that's moved backwards into manufacturing cars. Mm-hmm. And they struggled at that, right?
Right.
And now he's not really in the battery business, kind of, right? A lot of the Chinese companies are in that middle ground. They are EV manufacturers buying parts, and they maybe have a little foot in AI, or they're working with a company like Huawei or something. And then maybe they have a foot in batteries, but most don't. But there's a lot of them out there.
Why is Tesla worth like, I don't know, 100x of what BYD is?
I don't know. That's stock market stuff. Like I understand businesses. I don't necessarily understand why the markets are valuing companies as they are. The animal spirits and all of that. I look at it in terms of business strength. I analyze companies, right? And then competitive strength, technology. That's what I look at. BYD is very strong. Tesla is very strong. Toyota is interesting. There's some. Ultimately, I'm not a car analyst,
right.
So when it moves into more of a digital question, then I get smarter. When we stop talking about cars and we start talking about computers that move, that's my area, software.
So,
but do I know Toyota factories versus No. Auto analysts do that stuff. That's not me.
Well, I mean, we could say that Tesla is differentiated from the car industry in that it manufactures its own chips, has its own chip technology, has its own software, right?
So does BYD. And they're making their own chips.
Okay, so what's the difference? One is a robot company?
No, this is where the businesses, at a certain point, it's about competitive strength. Look, who's stronger? Coke, Pepsi, right?
Right.
Who's got the competitive strength and is going to beat the other? That's usually phase 2. Phase 1, when an entirely new business emerges, it's just who's fastest on their feet and who can execute and who can. That's what we're seeing. Like BYD's very fast on their feet. They're innovating like crazy. So is Tesla. It's a race, right? But a lot of what they're doing is going to end up becoming commodities that everybody has. So when the dust settles, who's stronger and who's not? And we don't know yet. Well, I'm starting to take it apart, but I don't know yet. So right now, a lot of what Tesla's doing, everyone's going to be able to do in 2 years. And same with BYD. So we're in the early sort of crazy land rush phases of this business. And who has durable competitive advantages is not going to play out for a while. And we'll see. But over the next couple of years, we're all going to get subsidized electric cars. If you want to buy an electric car in the next couple of years, you'll get a good deal because they've all got to get market share. And then most of them will die and there'll be a handful of survivors. And then we'll see, who was the Microsoft and who was Skype, right? Skype used to be the big leader.
Yes.
But they ain't a digital giant. Who's Yahoo and who's Google? Right? Yahoo was a leader, but turns out the business model is not that powerful at the end of the day. Google search, they were the leader. And oh, by the way, your business model, nobody can touch it 20 years later.
Can you imagine and I'm sure this is going to happen with all these car companies, EV companies out there. They're going to start collapsing, right?
Yeah. We're in the early days of the China, this is very common in China. Yeah. Like when a new sector opens up, ride sharing, bike sharing companies.
Yes. Yeah.
There were 30 or 40 of them 8 years ago. Like they were everywhere. Now most of them are dead and there's a couple left. And it turns out their business models aren't awesome, but they're fine. But, now everyone's moved on to the next. So China does that a lot.
So with bikes, I remember seeing bike graveyards, right? Bikes piled on top of, looked like landfill.
They had good visuals. That was a lot of the reason. They had really good visuals. The graveyards were cool.
And now thinking about the car industry, right? And okay, so it's in China, but they're exporting like crazy, right?
Yep.
And at some point, one of these companies is going to die. Right.
And most of them are
going to die. So you're going to have these cars that are no longer serviceable.
Not just the new ones. There's a ton of startups. The legacy companies. Now they won't pass off. They won't die off as quickly.
Right.
Because it's not like everyone's driving EVs. There'll still be combustion engines.
Yeah.
But a lot of the market's shifting from combustion to EV. So we're going to see that market decrease. So that'll be interesting. But right now we're in the crazy phase. And everyone's going for market share everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing like Chinese EVs everywhere. You go to Mexico, you're going to see BYD now. Thailand, Southeast Asia, Xpeng, NIO. I can't even keep their logos straight.
I love the new NIO concept as a differentiator. You can swap your battery out. I was in my friend's car and
battery swapping. That's kind of okay. That's an interesting idea.
You go to a station and basically it takes the battery from under your car, it swaps it out, puts a new battery in, takes around 5 minutes, and off you go. You have a full charge battery. So no need to wait for. But is that a sustainable advantage, right? Is that really an advantage, or if that's just just a feature, right?
No, I mean this phase. It's like venture capitalists are very good at this stage of analyzing things. I was in business school. There was a great case study I saw that looked at like the first couple years of the PC industry in the late 70s, right? And there were all these companies making personal computers.
Oh yeah.
And I saw a list. I remember this. It was kind of crazy. It was like 1977 or something like that. Here's the 10, biggest personal computer companies, and here's what they're offering. And it was like, I'm fuzzy on the deals. It was like IBM. Personal computers are going to be high-end devices for scientists and business people and engineers. The average price is going to be $3,000, and you're going to compete on performance. And then it was Toshiba, blah, blah, blah. And then there was all these companies I never even heard of. And then like number 6 on the list was Apple. And it was like, this is going to be a personal device that's going to cost about $1,000, and people are going to use it for photos, storing documents, and other things. And a year later, all of them were gone because they all released their computers. None of them sold except for Apple. And what they had said was going to happen was exactly what the PC ended up being. And you look at 1978, and all the companies are gone except for Apple, right? And who knows how it's going to shake out? But certain companies will get it right and they'll nail it, and others won't, and they'll just. You die pretty quick if you release your big PC and you're wrong about what customers want. There's no next year. You're okay. Yeah, but it was pretty amazing to see how one guy nailed what this technology was going to be. And everyone else got it wrong. Well, most people, Toshiba did pretty well, but compact. But it'll be the same for EVs. So
So what? Like with all these, companies thinking of digital strategy and there's how many companies out there that are producing content, streaming content. You just look at the U.S. market. You have Peacock and HBO and Netflix. There's something you talk about, which is irrational competition.
Yeah.
What is irrational competition, and when does an industry become irrational?
Like question one is always, what do customers want? Who has product market fit? Now, until you get that solved, all the strategy stuff doesn't matter. Look, if nobody's buying your app, who cares if you have competitive advantage? You got no traction.
Right.
Okay. Once you get question one, you move to question two, which is, what is your competitive strength? Can you fight off the competitors? And then question three is, does this make you any money? You can have a dominant business against a proven need and still not make any money. Or maybe not a lot of money. Bike sharing. I like bike sharing. These bikes you can rent on the streets of Beijing. There's a proven need. Actually, people like to rent them.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good business. I hop on, I scan it, I ride a couple blocks, I click off. The competitive dynamics are clear. Couple companies have won. DD Bikes, Mobike became Meituan Bikes. Ofo is a whole story.
Yes.
Okay, and then at the end of the day, what are the unit economics? Not awesome. You don't make a lot of money. It's closer to a vending machine business than a digital giant. It's very easy to dominate a not very good business. So you want to kind of get an answer to all three. And sometimes the stars all align and you get all three. Facebook. Everybody they don't love it. They all use it. One company dominates globally, 3 billion users, and it throws off cash. Like, it's stunning how much cash that thing. So sometimes the stars align and you win the whole world. Other times, that's not how it usually works. Most businesses that do well are medium to small businesses, and you can make a lot of money as a small business. So you kind of got to separate the questions, and people get a little too dazzled by the giants. You can have a very good a very good regional business in only one city. If you own half the gas stations in Omaha, you're making a ton of money. If you have the biggest furniture retail business in Omaha, you make good money. And Warren Buffett owns that, by the way. You don't have to be a giant, but in fact, it's far more what is the likelihood that you are going to dominate an industry for a whole country, let alone the world? Very unlikely. Can I dominate the hospital business of Reno, Nevada? Maybe. That's doable. It's far easier to dominate a smaller market, whether the market's geographic or whether it's a type of customer. Can I dominate what new moms want in Thailand? Yeah, if you built a very customized app that was very specific to what they wanted and you understood that base, you're far more likely to dominate a customer niche or a geography or a point in the value chain than you are that, like, I'm going to dominate China. No, it's too hard. Small services businesses make a lot of money. It's a good business niche to go. Like, I had a business professor used to tell me, you want to make a lot of money in this world, go after a local services business. Because by definition, if it's service in person, you've just eliminated all your competitors that aren't in your town. You don't care what people are doing in another country. Now, if they're making cups and shipping them, they're a competitor. Services are by definition local. So it's far easier to win. Now, there's other ways to win, but anyways, I took us off track. What was your question? I went off on a tangent there.
Well, we were talking about irrational competition, and I mean, I think you covered some of the key points there. And probably a side effect, I guess, of irrational competition is exits, right? Or the barriers to exit. Everything
I just said presupposes management that is acting rationally. Management doesn't always act rationally, or at least not in the short term. So you can, if you are let's say a media guy in Hollywood working at a medium-sized studio, and you see streaming services coming up on your left, and you see Amazon and YouTube and generative AI where people can make animated movies on their laptop, you're getting disrupted from everywhere. And you realize you can't compete. Sometimes the answer is, look, we can't compete. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to close down? You're a middle-aged man who spent his whole life trying to become senior vice president of this company. There is no next step. You're going to retire? So people will stay in businesses or stay in a field for reasons. Now, you could say that's not irrational. Let's say it's rational at the personal level, but it's not rational at the company level. When the right move at the company level might be, we need to exit this business and go into something else. But the management may not want to do that. There's a company in Singapore Press Holdings, which was a very interesting business 20, 30 years ago because they sort of dominated newspapers. Print newspapers used to be one of the most powerful business models on the planet. Right? They were local monopolies. There was the New York Times, there was the Boston Herald. Like every company, every city had one monopoly. And whoever owned that newspaper was like the richest person in town. Everyone knew who owned, the Washington Post or the LA Times. Well, then digital comes along and it turns out print newspapers is not where you want to be. Well, Singapore Press Holdings had, very good position in Singapore. And then it was also associated with the government for various reasons. along the way, when they were throwing off a lot of cash in the good years, they ended up buying a bunch of healthcare businesses. I think there were nursing homes they bought. And now...
of course, so that they can fill them with newspaper.
Well, because they had all this cash and you got to do something with it.
Right, okay.
So, Forbes in the US, magazines used to be good too. Time, Newsweek, Forbes. He had a bunch of real estate in New York. He had, he owned an island and some other. Well, Singapore, they bought a bunch of healthcare companies. Okay, fast forward 20 years, it turns out newspapers, hard to make money in. Print and even digital, very hard to make money in that business. Most people haven't figured out how to do it. Warren Buffett told me this at a lunch. He said there was 1,200, not exactly right, but around 1,200 daily newspapers in the United States. Only 2 of them that he knew of had developed viable digital business models. New York Times, I think Wall Street Journal was the other one. Most of them don't know what to do. It may be that there isn't one. You can survive, but difficult business to be in as a daily digital newspaper, the Contra Costa Times in the Bay Area. Hard business. It was a beautiful business. Now it's a hard business. Singapore Press, it's like, you guys should just do healthcare. Like healthcare in Singapore, there's a lot of good businesses there. Very local, operationally intensive service business. You've been in it for 20 years. Let's do that and use that business to, if you want to stay in the news business, fine, there's the reasons to do that. Fund that. And they just bought Tech in Asia, I think. They just merged up or something in the last month. Yeah. So there's ways to make this work. But you kind of got to know where you're going to live. And I actually think that's a good business. I actually think if you wanted to do, I'm a professor. Colleges are a bad business model. Everybody knows you can't survive as a college without an endowment. Nobody's trying to survive as a for-profit college that lives and pays all the professors based on tuition. That model doesn't work. So everyone has an endowment. That was a good solution to the problem. Now, business schools actually are kind of profitable, but most colleges are not. Executive MBA is pretty profitable. Okay, it's kind of the same for newspapers. The rational solution is let's build a separate business or an endowment or a foundation and put this on top. But trying to stay as a profit-based entity, okay, you might make it work. New York Times did. Most people don't know how to make that work. I like the healthcare business of Singapore. Like that's a good solution to the problem. So you get into this sort of these difficult discussions when digital technology changes the nature of business, which it's doing faster and faster now. And the idea that you're going to avoid digital change, I think we're all getting hit eventually. And you just got to sort of understand that's going to happen and be a little more flexible. Okay, we know what we'll do. I think Forbes should have been in the real estate business. They had a bunch of great properties in New York, and they sold them to fund their media business, which kept basically declining. They still exist. I think a bunch of Hong Kong investors ended up sort of quasi-buying them eventually. It's the nature of the world we all live in now, like as businesses and professionally, right? Radiologists, that was a good job. Turns out generative AI is really good at reading X-rays and MRIs. What are you going to do about that? Right? Professors are getting disrupted.
Use it to make better decisions.
Yeah, well...
Someone's still got to deliver the news, right?
Yeah, but do you need 20 radiologists or you need one radiologist? Professors are going to get disrupted.
Yeah.
Digital strategy consultants were actually pretty well placed because, everyone's going to get a turn, and probably most businesses are going to get disrupted. Is the wrong word. The word McKinsey uses is we have to rewire things. You have to rewire for a digital world, as opposed. The disruption scares people, but I would say transformation, rewiring is the right way to think about it. And that's at the business level and probably at the personal level, professional level.
I think you've probably seen a huge amount of digital transformation, disruption happening just in the past couple of years, right? And probably you as a professional in this space, I mean, lecturing, educating, consulting. You've touched so many companies, right? And you know, you've also been sitting in front of Warren Buffett and the chairman of BYD and
I don't know the chairman of BYD
or countless others.
I've never met him.
Countless others, and you know, really, I want to say like helping shape, you know, the digital economy of the future, and what, you know,
not shape.
I think you're underestimating the impact that you.
That is the goal. Actually, that is my own little personal, professional goal, is to create a body of thinking and frameworks that lets people understand what's happening. Because if I have a lot of frameworks I've been looking. If you're a my brother's a dentist. If you're a dentist, all of this stuff is bewildering. Like, the world is changing so fast and they don't know what to make of this. Well, if there's a series of books or frameworks or body of thinking to sort of take this apart, okay, that would be a good legacy, and I'd like to have that. That's kind of what I'm trying to do. Because, you know, the number of people that this is bewildering, it's 95% of people don't know what to make of this. They're busy doing their jobs. You know, they're running their media company in LA. They don't have time to think about this stuff, and that's not their background. They got TV shows to make, and then they got to go home and see their kids, and like, you know, and this is like sort of this storm on the horizon, which can create a lot of anxiety. So yeah, I would like that. That would actually be something I'd like to do in my life. That's kind of what I have been trying to do. So, you know, it's funny that like, I don't know Buffett at all. Like, okay, I can email him and he'll reply. But no, I just did a couple lunches with him, along with like, you know, over the years, 30,000 other people, right?
Many of us would be envious of that.
Yeah, that was just a bit of a luck as being a professor. That was a little bit of a gift. But
so being a professor did have its benefits.
That's actually how it happened. Like, if you wanted to have lunch with Buffett, it's almost impossible. The only exception he would make is for professors. And that's how I showed up with a bunch of students from China. And that's how I ended up hanging out with him for a couple hours, a couple times. It was a fluke, right? But hey, a lot of good stuff in life is a fluke.
Right place, right time, right career.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at him and Charlie Munger and his mentor, Ben Graham, their biggest legacy will not be as investors and rich dudes. Their biggest legacy will be as teachers. Right? Nobody knows Ben Graham's investment anymore, but people still read his books 100 years later. Charlie Munger, his biggest legacy now that he's passed, will be as a teacher. So it's you know, that's not a small thing. And Buffett for sure. I mean, he's taught how many millions of people how to think about business and life. So yeah, it's kind of the strange thing is these people who, you know, spend all their life making money. And it turns out their real legacy is as a teacher. There's something kind of nice about that. But he never taught technically. He did it by letters and talking, as opposed, which is, I think, the right way to do it.
Yes.
He was never, and he kind of makes fun of business professors at business schools a lot. So did Charlie Munger.
Well, I feel very honored and humbled actually to have you here speaking to the audience today, right? Because I think it's, you know, you're I want to say you're probably in the early part of your teaching career, right? With all the knowledge that you're acquiring and resharing, and I'm sure that following this, you're probably going to have some new followers and people that you are going to make a lasting impact on.
Yeah, it is kind of, I get a lot of satisfaction out of that, actually. Like, I've been teaching at business schools for about 10 years. I'm not doing it right now. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it anymore, actually. But, you know, I will go and have like meetings at Singapore or wherever, and people will start arguing about businesses, right? Oh, this business is, and they'll start using my language. And they may be right. I'm like, yeah, you're wrong. Like, Jeff, you don't know what you're talking about. Your framework for BYD is not right, because they're going to get a data network effect based on mileage. And they'll start using my own frameworks to argue with me. And it'll quietly kind of make me happy. I'm like, that's my language. I thought that up. And that phrase, I thought that up in a Starbucks in Rio. Like, and I get a lot of satisfaction when everyone starts arguing with my terms. I'm like, okay, that's all right. And maybe they're probably right. They're like, yeah, you don't understand auto. I'm like, that's true. So, yeah, I do notice that from time to time, which is kind of pleasant.
Well, like you've proven, you don't need to understand the auto industry to understand the disruption that is happening.
I think once you look at something with the right framework, suddenly I actually enjoy this a lot, is working with companies, and we will do frameworks and lectures, and then I will sort of step back, and the whole management team, let's say of the supermarket, they will start arguing about what to do in their business, and they're all using the same vocabulary for the first time. And they're starting to talk about, and then they really start to move. And you can see their expertise like coming through. It's like, wow, you know a lot about supermarkets, right? Yeah. But without the right sort of language for the digital component, the discussions it's like everyone's paddling in different directions. I do see that a lot, actually. And that's actually pretty cool. When you start to combine digital frameworks, a certain amount of expertise with real industry experience that you would only get by working in a field for 30 years, that's really impressive, right? Then you see, they're really good at this stuff. But usually it's that digital piece that's missing, or one person has it. The CEO might have it, the CTO have it, but you need the whole team to have it so that people aren't sitting quiet because they don't quite understand what we're talking about. You want everybody. Everyone on the same boat. Right? And then the team really starts to move. That's actually fun to watch. I enjoy that a lot. So,
dude, I love this. And I think that if people want to get in touch with you, Jeffrey Towson, T-O...
You go jefftowson.com. You'll see there's blogs, or you can go over to Tech Strategy, the podcast, or Amazon. Just type my name. We'll
put that in the show notes.
Pop up in Spotify or Amazon or wherever.
So I want to do a quick fire round before we wrap. Cool. Are you down?
Yeah, I was rambling on there. I'll be succinct.
No, well, this is the succinct session. Must-read book for anyone looking to do business in China.
The trick with China is think about industries, don't think about China. It's too big. It's too complicated. So industry... Financial services, there's a very good book called Red Capitalism, which is just a deep dive in financial services and banks of China. And that will give you one, it's a great book, and two, it will give you an understanding of how politics works. Industry-specific books are the way to think about China. Otherwise, it's too daunting and people get all political. It's weird.
McDonald's, Burger King, or Shake Shack?
I like Shake Shack better, but I do go to McDonald's more often. I used to work at Burger King when I was in high school. I can't eat it. I still can't eat at Burger King.
Wow.
If you've made tens of thousands of burgers, I still can't eat at Burger King. So Shake Shack is, if there was one close, I'd go all the time.
What's harder to accomplish? To define the right business strategy, solve differential equations, or pass the gross anatomy in medical school?
Anatomy is actually difficult. Not difficult. It's a pain because it's just memorization. Differential equations is a game, right? Business is frameworks. But to learn all the parts of the human body, you literally just have to memorize. Here's the vagus nerve. It runs from your brain all the way down your spine. It has branches that break off. There are, I don't even remember, 57 different branches. You have to remember the names and the order of the branches. So it's just memorizing like crazy. You know how doctors do it? Well, at least how we did it, is we used to have dirty limericks. Like if you have to remember all the branches of a nerve, you come up with a dirty saying in your mind, because dirty sayings are really easy to remember. And then each word is one of the branches. So I used to have this list of really horrendously obscene little statements that would help me remember anatomy. And doctors, they share these, like it's a thing. It's a good trick for memorizing. If I tell you an obscene statement that's 12 words long, and I ask you a week from now, you'll probably remember it.
I'm sure.
It does work.
Do you think men or women remember those obscene statements?
It doesn't have to be like, it just be swear words like that, blah, blah, blah is blah, 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 and I, blah, 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 and it does stick in the brain. Yeah.
Physics, medicine, business, biophysics. If these were ice cream flavors, which would be your favorite and why?
I love physics. I think it's my favorite thing in the world. And if I lived my life again, if I had a second life, I'd be a physicist. That's where I started. The problem I have with it is the questions are so difficult that you can spend your whole life very easily in physics and end up with nothing. Business problems, human problems, software problems are difficult but very solvable. So that's kind of where I like to sit. That's where Buffett sits. That's where Bill Gates sits. That's where Jeff Bezos sits. That's mostly where Elon Musk. These are very smart men who are targeting problems that are difficult but doable. Physics problems are like, most physicists, you're going to end up, it's like, did you figure anything out? It's like, nope.
You go into a rabbit hole.
It's like, it's very hard to figure out the nature of the universe. It's not that hard to figure out which e-commerce company is going to do better in Singapore next year. But physics would be, I would love to do physics. Still my favorite thing.
Most inspiring person to you?
It's kind of weird, that one. I like physicists, so James Clerk Maxwell. That was a god. I always, whenever I go travel, I always go see where the physicists are, right? Those are my heroes in life. I'd put statues of scientists everywhere if someone gave me the authority. But in terms of daily inspiration, I like Richard Feynman a lot. One, he was awesome. He did those, but also he had a lot of fun. He was a quirky, strange dude who would he won the Nobel Prize and he used the money to buy a beach house. Everyone's like, when are you going to donate the money? He's like, I bought a beach house in Malibu. And he would be in Pasadena and he used to do his physics proof down at the strip club. That's where he would sit in the back and do physics problems. And he would fly around the world and go to these weird villages. He was just a quirky dude who seemed to have there's two things I like about him. I'll give you a real answer. One, he was quirky and funny. And strange. And then two, he just liked to sit and figure out things all day. That's all he did. I think he called it the joy of figuring things out, where he would just sit with a pad of paper and figure stuff out all day long. Even when he was dying, he was figuring out spring problems on a piece of paper. And I as I get older, I identify with that a lot. I don't need to have all the thrills I used to have when I was younger. Ooh, we're on a private jet for the first time. I'm happier just sitting with a pad of paper and a cup of coffee and taking apart. There's a quiet contentment in that. I think when you get older and, all the thrills of you've done everything, right? In no cities I've been everywhere. Now it's just, I get a lot of contentment out of that. Now I think about him a lot more than I used to. Just, I got up at 6 this morning and I spent 4 hours going through Facebook's numbers with a big cup of coffee.
Wow. And
it was great. And I felt great. It was a really good day, right?
That's awesome. And that's Jeff Towson for you guys.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This is a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for being on Epicenter. And we got to get you back here because I feel like we still have so much more to unpack. All right. Thanks. That wraps up another episode. Check it.
Oh, I totally forgot about the camera. Hey.
All right. It's there. Yep.